Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this video. My name is Brian. I'm one of the pastors here at Calvary Chapel Melbourne. I'm here with my wife, Katie. Hello, Katie.
Hello.
This is part 2 of a video series called How to Read the Bible. And we thought we'd record these videos to help you learn how to read the Bible. In our first video, we talked about 3 excuses for not reading the Bible. And in this video, we want to answer the question, is the Bible trustworthy? So Katie, a lot of people have a lot of things to say about whether the Bible is trustworthy. Professors, people on the news, there's a lot of people who have a lot of criticisms about the Bible.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is just talk about sort of 3 reasons that we believe the Bible is trustworthy.
Yes.
The first reason is this: there is external evidence that the Bible is trustworthy. So what do you have to say about sort of the external evidence of the Bible?
Right, so external evidence is evidence that is outside of the Bible itself that shows that it is in fact reliable. So one of the big criticisms that people will have about the Bible is that, oh, it was written thousands and thousands of years ago and the stories have changed over time. People have written things that aren't true, that type of thing. So they'll basically question whether or not the Bible we're reading today is the same as the Bible that was written in the time of Christ or before.
Right, like people will say that it's a giant game of telephone.
Exactly.
One person wrote something, over time it's evolved and changed.
The story changes, right. So I think one of the things to remember, though, is that one of the ways that we can know whether or not a book is trustworthy is by counting the amount of manuscripts, the amount of copies that we have, and then how early those copies were written, how close they were to the original manuscript.
Makes sense.
So, with some other books, some other famous ancient texts that we read, for example, Plato's Republic. That book, we have about 7 manuscripts of Plato's Republic, and it was written around 1,500 years within the original time period.
Wow.
So that's still a book that we believe is true. We believe that that book we are reading is the same one that Plato actually wrote.
Wow.
Another good example would be Homer's Iliad. We have around 643 manuscript copies of that book, and they were dated around 500 years of the original. And again, widely accepted as true. We read it in high school. There's no question of whether or not that book is the same one that Homer wrote.
So both of those, there's a massive gap between the original and the copies we have. And in the case of Plato, only 7 copies, but we still consider it to be trustworthy.
Exactly. Now, the New Testament, on the other hand, we have 5,600 manuscripts.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of the New Testament, and they're dated within 100 years of the original. So what that means for us is, since they are dated so close within the original, we can be more confident that there were not changes made, that people didn't have time to alter it, and we have so many copies that are all the same, which really shows that the Bible we're reading today is the same one that was written at that time.
That is amazing. Like, that is a lot of evidence.
It's a lot.
And not to mention, these copies are spread throughout Europe and Asia. So they're not all in one place.
Right, they're everywhere. And we have a lot of archaeological evidence as well that backs up what the Bible is saying.
That's awesome. So we've talked about external evidence. Let's talk about internal evidence. What do we mean when we talk about internal evidence?
So internal evidence is looking within the Bible itself to show that it's reliable. So when you look at the Bible, there's about 40 authors that were involved with writing the book, and they all agree. There are no major contradictions throughout the Bible. We're talking about a book that's written over 1,500 years, 40 authors, lots of different types of literature, and they all have the same story. They all agree, which is pretty impressive. And there's a lot of talk about there being errors in the Bible and contradictions and things like that. The vast majority of these errors are copyist errors, meaning that when someone was copying the manuscripts, they wrote A instead of an, or they wrote Thee instead of The.
Right.
So they're very, very minor issues, and they absolutely do not affect the message of the scripture in any way.
Yeah. So when we hear a professor or someone talking about the massive amount of errors, really what we should be thinking about is a guy in a cave taking one copy and copying it to someone else with a tiny little candle. He makes one error. That doesn't mean the Bible has an error. That just means one of the copies contains a minor spelling error.
Exactly.
Awesome. So external evidence, internal evidence, and the last thing that we want to talk about is fulfilled prophecy.
Right. So when we read the Old Testament, we see hundreds and hundreds of prophecies that are all pointing toward a Messiah, pointing toward Jesus Christ. These prophecies were all fulfilled in one man, Jesus.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, it's just a coincidence. Jesus just happened to fulfill some of these prophecies. But the fact is, if you were to take the entire state of Texas, cover it in silver dollars to a depth of around 2 feet, pick up one silver dollar, mark it, throw it into the state, and then have a blind man wander into the state, randomly stoop down, pick up a silver dollar, the chances of him picking up the marked silver dollar are the same as Jesus randomly fulfilling only 8 of these prophecies.
Dang, that's crazy.
And he, in fact, filled hundreds.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we know from science and from archaeology that the prophecies were in fact written hundreds of years before from things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and other things like that. So somebody didn't come along behind him and fill in the blanks.
Right.
So that's super encouraging. External evidence, internal evidence, and fulfilled prophecy all point to the fact that God wrote the Bible, and that the Bible we have in our hands right now is the same one that God wrote thousands of years ago.
Exactly.
So we can trust the Bible. Well, we hope that this was encouraging to you. We hope this gives you confidence to read the Bible. Check out part 3 of this series. We're going to be giving some super practical ways to read the Bible. I hope it really helps you. We'll see you in part 3. Thanks for checking out part 2 of our video series on how to read the Bible. I hope it was helpful to you. I hope it was encouraging for you. If it was helpful, please share it with someone else who you think could benefit from this content. In addition to that, would love if you subscribe to the video, would love if you liked it, and check out part 3 of our series as well.